The injury bug seems to be visiting the Spurs right now. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for KENS 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. TGIF, everybody. Hope you're ready for a good weekend. Spurs play later on tonight against the Clippers. Unknown if Kawhi Leonard will be playing, but if he is, pretty sure Spurs fans will have fun with that tonight at the AT&T. What are we talking about today? The injury bug. In case you've been living on a rock, the Spurs are getting a bad case of the injury blues right now. There's Devin Vassell, who, as of this recording, is not back from his left knee soreness. Blake Wesley out for a while with a sprained MCL. You can find out yesterday during the game versus the Raptors that Trey Jones may have injured his shoulder. That Romeo Langford got banged up, head trauma. We're going to be talking all about that, plus yoga. Yes, yoga. Spurs and yoga. But before we do that, I want to thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It is time for you to go get it. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com/locked on. Before we bring in our guest, just a quick caveat. I know everybody's talking about the former Spur Josh Primo allegations against the team himself. We're going to be saving that for a future episode of Locked On Spurs. We kind of want to wait to see what else comes out because hopefully the Spurs will talk about it, or maybe Primo's camp can do that. But let's go to bring in our guest, and he is actually going to be here for an entire episode. Yes, not a segment, an episode. He is our good friend making his weekly visit, Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Doctor, welcome back to Locked On Spurs.
It's good to be with you again, Jeff. Appreciate you having me.
Not a problem. Make sure to follow the doctor on Twitter. It is at Austin ER Doc, and he is going to tell you all about what he has cooking off to the side and what he does. He's actually a doctor out in Austin. And he's also has a practice that covers concerts, venues, all that good stuff out in Austin. We're going to be talking about that momentarily. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive into that. Dr. Ryan, it looks like the injury bug has paid a visit to the Spurs.
I definitely would say that is the case. I think because there's not a real sense of urgency to grind out, every possible victory for a playoff positioning kind of season this year, that you have more of an opportunity to be cautious and slow play the recovery of these injuries to be sure that they don't become chronic. So I think we're being a lot more careful with injuries like Devin Vassell's knee than we might be if we were trying to grind out victories for playoff positioning.
Well, let's go ahead and get things going here. And everybody, once again, I am joined by Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He is an ER doc at St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center. He's also with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. He'll talk about that shortly. So let's start off with the big news. Is just when he's going to get his time to shine, filling the void left by former Spur Josh Primo, Blake Wesley, the rookie guard, comes out that first game, and wouldn't you know it, sprains his MCL. That's what the Spurs reported. Now, the Spurs did not give a timetable, but other outlets did report that he might be facing several weeks of being out off the court. Doctor, can you explain to us what type of injury this is? What did Blake Wesley suffer? How do you assess this?
Well, we were last time we talked, it was just soreness was the diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Now that we've had some more time, they've actually gotten the MRI and have released that it was a grade 3 MCL injury, which usually involves a complete tear of the medial collateral ligament. The MCL, the medial collateral ligament, is the one on the inside of the knee. Now, of all the ligaments in the knee, the four major ones being the MCL, the medial collateral, the lateral collateral, the ACL that everybody hears about, and the PCL. You want that MCL is probably the least amount of recovery time and the least devastating injury. But when you have a grade 3 injury, that is the most serious. It takes the longest to heal and is pretty much the only one that you consider having surgery on. Other than that, usually the MCL, we just let it heal, do some physical therapy to strengthen the muscles around it, and go back to play. With a grade 3 injury, you could consider a surgical repair. If he doesn't do surgery, we're talking 4 to 8 weeks. So a pretty extended time out.
Right.
However, if you do surgery, we're talking, season over, 4 to 9 months, depending on how you heal.
Right.
So we're going to hope they're conservative and hope we see him back in that 4 to 8 week.
You can expect I mean, based on the history of the Spurs, you can expect them to be conservative. I mean, the timetable, they may extend it out maybe a week or two just to be safe. What is this type of injury happens? Obviously, for the profession that he plays basketball, but how much of an impact or how much of a strain does an MCL have to go through to get to a grade 3? Does it take significant impact? Is it just one of those things? How does what causes that trauma?
So the MCL injuries are most common in basketball players, some also in soccer players, and it's usually when you plant and cut. So it's a change of direction. So obviously the forces that an NBA player, especially of Devin's size, athletic ability, muscle mass, that plant and cut happens, hundreds of times a game. And it was just one of those times when you get a particularly forceful plant and cut that MCL injury, that MCL that gets injured and torn the way his was. It's a ligament that connects the two bones, the femur and the tibia, the two major bones there together. And so when you're planting and changing direction, that ligament's kind of what is holding those two bones together. And you got a lot of force on it when you're making those hard cuts.
Yeah, Blake Wesley, his style of play is very fast and furious. We saw him in the Las Vegas Summer League just going 100 miles an hour and then some. He's probably excited. He's getting those minutes that are freed up, likely going to get the nod to back up Trey Jones. So, yeah, it happens, but with a guy like Blake Wesley, and then we're looking at that timetable, could we expect him maybe go out there with some sort of, compression or anything like that? Will he be would you recommend something like that when he does return to the court?
Oh, absolutely. Most likely, not most likely, he'll definitely be in a brace for the next 4 to 8 weeks where you can still flex the knee, but it can't go side to side because that's what the MCL does, is that side to side movement stability. So with that gone, he'll be in a big knee immobilizer brace that'll let him flex, but won't let the knee move side to side. That could cause more injury to that MCL. Because without the MCL's protection, that's when you can progress and then get an ACL tear. And then we're talking, done for a year.
I was going to ask you, immediately after the game, Popovich was asked about Blake Wesley's condition. And, obviously he's just going by what the doctors tell him at that moment. Interesting. I want to get the difference between this because in that press conference, he says, well, the x-rays showed nothing happen and that he hoped that Wesley would be back and ready to go for the next game. However, the next game in between, that's when they announced that an MRI revealed that it was a tear. So I take it an X-ray and an MRI, totally different. Can you explain to the listeners, why maybe an MRI is better than the X-ray?
Oh yeah, they're completely different, like totally different levels. So an X-ray is what they call a plain film. All it shows are bones. So make sure there's no fracture there. MRI, you shoot an X-ray in 15 seconds and be able to see it in 30 seconds and see if there's any fractures, anything like that. An MRI, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been through that process, but it's a much longer process. Probably takes about an hour to get done and has orders of magnitude greater levels of detail. Shows all the ligaments, the tendons, the soft tissue in great detail, but it takes a lot longer to get read. So that's why they can do a quick x-ray after and at least say, hey, nothing's broken, but you can't comment on any of the tendons or ligaments until you have that MRI, which takes a lot more time. So that's why we didn't have that information till later. And the thing about MCLs and ACLs is it doesn't cause a great deal of pain compared to other injuries. What it is just that feeling of instability. And a lot of times you'll have muscle spasm around it, so it doesn't really feel unstable for a couple of days. And then when they get back on it, they're like, wow, it feels like it's the quote you get from a lot of basketball players. It feels like it's going to give out. That feeling of instability because the bones aren't being held together tightly by that ligament anymore. So then you can say, well, something's not right. Let's go get the MRI. And that's where they discovered the grade 3 injury.
We are talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He's an ER doc at St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center. He's also with Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. We're going to be continuing talking with him in the next segment, a little bit more about the Blake Wesley issue, and then ask him what's going on with Vassell. You know, for a guy who has just left knee soreness, he has been away from the court for a little longer than maybe most expected. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Prize Picks. It's a daily fantasy you want to get right now. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You don't compete against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports. They even have disc golf and Euro basket and cricket. Yeah, they got it all covered there at Prize Picks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. You want to go download the Prize Picks app right now, or just go to prizepicks.com, sign up, play daily fantasy sports. First-time users, listen up. You can get yourself a 100% instant deposit match on up to $100 with the following promo code, Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks gives you $100. You deposit $50, they'll give you $50 right back. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit matchup to $100. We're back with Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on this episode of Locked On Spurs, and we're talking the injury bug visiting the Spurs. We're going to be talking about Devin Vassell, wrap up Blake Wesley chat, and get into some yoga. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insight only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So, Doctor, wrapping up our chat with about Wesley, you made it very clear this is like the least of the worst ones that he could have suffered. When he gets back, he should be back to normal, right?
Yeah, MCL injuries usually don't affect the rest of your career like an Achilles rupture or an ACL tear. Like I said, it's if you had to pick one of the 4 major knee ligaments to injure, that's the one. You don't want the ACL, you don't want the PCL, because those are automatic surgery and usually a year to come back from for a basketball player. So yeah, he has the most serious of the 3 grades of an MCL injury. It can be, like we said, either managed conservatively, and we're talking somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks back to the court, or they can do surgery and then he's done for the season. We'll have to see. Obviously it's progressed pretty significantly just from after the game, thinking he'd be back in the next game to, now we're at least out several weeks. So we're kind of in that waiting game to see how he responds to the physical therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully Blake will be back ready to go once the healing time is done. Now let's talk about Devin Vassell. For a guy who has left knee soreness, to the average, person who's not in the field that you are, think, he just sore. What's that, like a couple days and that's it. But he's still on the IR as of this recording ahead of tonight's game versus the Clippers. Why do you think it's been a while since Vassell has returned to the court? It feels like there might be more to it.
That's a possibility. I think this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, and that there's no sense of urgency to get him back on the court earlier. It's if it is what I was suspecting that it could be, being patellar tendonitis, there's no magic cure for that. The only cure for patellar tendonitis is rest. Now, when other players like famously Vince Carter, they would need 6 weeks of rest before it was totally back to normal. That's not really usually doable during an NBA season, and there's not really a lot of consequences other than pain to the injury. So they would just kind of deal with the pain, manage the pain, and continue to play. I think because he's so young, so early in his career, that this may be an opportunity to give him a little more extended rest time to let that patellar tendonitis kind of calm down before we put him back out there. Because like we said, it's not a grinding for each victory kind of season this year. So we don't want to see this turn into a chronic condition where he gets patellar tendonitis every year and has to deal with that pain. Maybe if we can knock it out with the first episode, it won't become an ongoing issue in his career.
And also could it be this simply that without him, the Spurs have been okay. They've been picking up wins. Perhaps, the coaching staff, medical staff feel like, hey, the team's being all right without him. Obviously, they need him as the season goes on, hold him out a little longer. They're at home. He's creature comforts. He's not have to travel anywhere. Rest him up a couple of days. But it probably sounds like a stupid question here, but can left knee soreness develop into something larger? And because when I think of soreness, I think when I bump myself on the doorknob or hit myself at the gym, I got a purple blotch for a while and that's it. But can something like left knee soreness grow into something bigger if doctors don't monitor it?
Well, left knee soreness is a symptom. It's not a diagnosis.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'm not. Okay. When they say left knee soreness, that just means knee hurts. It's not giving me any specific information there.
Okay.
So what I assume is that he either had an MRI, there was nothing structural going on, so he's got pain, but nothing, no tears, nothing they can see on that MRI. Sometimes patellar tendonitis can show up. It doesn't always. It just means that you press on that patellar tendon right there in the front, and it hurts. So then this is tendonitis. If he hasn't had an MRI by now, he's going to get one here shortly with the extended time being out and the continued symptoms. It'll be time to get that MRI and get a specific diagnosis. But if I had to take a guess, I would say that he's probably already had the MRI. It was unremarkable, and we're dealing with controlling his pain and symptoms going forward. Because once an NBA player misses this many games, he's going to get the MRI.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like it's just that, the soreness, and the Spurs are likely just taking their time. Now these little other lingering type of, bug bites from the injury bug. You had about a flu-like symptoms hit a couple of players, Isaiah Roby and Jeremy Sohan, although Sohan did play yesterday or the other night versus the Raptors. But interesting enough, and I didn't bring this to your attention, but I figure I got you here. Let's bring it up. Keldon Johnson was out the game versus Toronto with right calf tightness. Can you explain what that means?
So that muscle is called the gastrocnemius, one of the most important muscles for a basketball player. That's what you jump with. That's that calf muscle when you stand on your tiptoes and push off. That's what you're using. And anytime that gets sore in a basketball player, you want to kind of manage that pretty conservatively, with all the rest, ice, compression things we were talking about last week, because you don't want a tear of the gastrocnemius muscle. That's devastating. I had one of those when I played, and it's miserable. That muscle tears, you get a knot behind the knee, turns black and blue, and your ability to jump or do anything else is done for, usually up to a year. And then the other thing that soreness in the gastroc can indicate is some irritation of the Achilles tendon. And obviously that is a devastating injury for a basketball player. So they want to be very careful with that so that it doesn't progress to set you up for the situation where you could tear your Achilles tendon.
Right.
Because that is a career-altering injury like we saw with Kobe.
Yeah. Dr. Icky, are you impressed that maybe I learned a little bit from you? Is this a rice treatment situation? Did I get that right?
Well, you got it. You got that.
I knew it. Yeah. I knew it. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear it's nothing too serious for Keldon Johnson, and the Spurs are taking care of that right away. Hey, when we get back, we're going to be talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle and ask him about yoga. Zach Collins talked about it to start the new season, that the Spurs are incorporating more yoga into their training sessions. We're going to hear what the doctor has to say about that in just a few seconds. We're back with Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on Locked On Spurs. He is making his weekly visit to the show. He is an ER doc at St. David's Medical Center and Austin Emergency Center. He's also with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. He'll talk about that in just a few seconds. So, Dr. Yoga, the Spurs are incorporating a lot more yoga into their training sessions. Zach Collins mentioned it ahead of the start of the season. He said he loves it, that a lot of the players are enjoying it, that they turn off all the lights at the training facility. They really get into it. In your opinion, why do you think the Spurs brought this on? Why are the players loving it? Why is it just something just good for anybody to incorporate in their life?
Oh, man, I think yoga is finally now in the mainstream of NBA teams' training regimen, and it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of individual players who have benefited greatly over the years from incorporating yoga daily or weekly into the training regimen, and it has extended their careers, decreased their injuries. The benefits are just innumerable. It's good for stretching, strengthening, increases their mobility and all their muscles, helps with their breath control, and even, especially for big men, the spatial awareness of their bodies, what we call proprioception. Robert Parrish and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar were the first two to really get into yoga as a part of NBA life, and were also, two of the first ones to be able to extend their careers into their 40s, and still play at a high level. And that has been passed down through generations, and one of the biggest yoga proponents right now is LeBron. He's been doing it since early in his career, and we're seeing how well he's performing into his late 30s. So it's great that the Spurs are incorporating it as well. It really does decrease the amount of injuries and just has innumerable benefits for basketball players and for people at large. I've been doing it for 25 years, and it's what keeps me on the court. Keeps your back functioning, your knees functioning, hamstrings, all that.
Did you mention to me your wife is involved in that area too with yoga?
Yeah, she's been a yoga teacher for about 20 years as well. We started doing it together, and then she went and got trained in an ashram here outside Austin, and has been teaching for quite a long time.
Oh, if you're in Austin, where can people go and join one of her classes or her sessions?
We practice at a place called Black Swan here in Austin. She's not teaching right now.
Okay.
She's home with the kiddos, but definitely Black Swan is a great place to check out here in Austin as a place to practice yoga.
I need to incorporate yoga, just something with flexible, because I get on a treadmill and I can run. Put me in the weight room, I'm good. But ask me to stretch or something, I'll be okay. I need help. Somebody help me. I have no mobility. Like I feel like a big rock, this big old rock boulder in the gym. But yeah.
Well, it helps a ton with flexibility. But I think what a lot of athletes misunderstand is they think that it's just stretching. And depending on the type of yoga that you're practicing, if you're doing an Ashtanga variation, what they call power yoga or whatever, that is not just stretching. That is a workout. Even for NBA players, they will come out of there drenched in sweat. It is cardiovascular, it is strength, all in one workout. So it's not people just think that it's just stretching and breathing. It's a lot more than that.
Absolutely. He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle, making his weekly visit here on Locked On Spurs. And we want to thank Doctor for actually having a full show with him, not just a segment. So we got one. There was just a lot to talk about. It was just so much, from Vassell and to Wesley to KJ and this and that. So yeah, that's why we need the doctor to stay on much longer. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at AustinER. And Dr. Ryan, tell us about what you got going over there at Backstage Medical.
Still have a lot of concerts this season, covering the Moody Center, the Circuit of the Americas, Dubs, and ACL Live. So tons of artists coming through. Obviously, I'm in the ER several days a week. I guess we should touch on that with, like you said, the flu bug hitting the Spurs. Yeah. It is flu season. We are seeing it in the ER. Tons more visits just in the last couple of weeks because we are just hitting the front side of the big flu season.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot more than we've seen in the last few years because people haven't been getting the flu because we've been social distancing and isolating. So it is important that our listeners go out there and get their flu shot because that's all you can do to prevent it. And I don't want to see you in the ER and feeling poorly. So that's a good public health message to get out there for folks.
Yeah, if you're in Austin, you want to run into Dr. Ryan doing yoga out in the park, not at his work. That's the best place to get him, is out there doing yoga with him and not having to go through what you might have to go through if you are suffering from the flu. But Doctor, we thank you for hopping on Locked On Spurs, and we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe to Locked On Spurs on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and of course, wherever you get podcasts. So for Dr. Ryan McCorkle, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.